The second heating method, in other words, the second method in which energy can be transferred, is called convection. Now, remember we talked about conduction in the last video. That's where energy is transferred from molecule to molecule. One molecule hits another, the energy is transferred directly. Convection is different, quite different actually. Convection is the transfer of energy by the mass movement of a fluid. Okay, at this point I'm going to pause and say, what's a fluid? Generally we say, oh, liquids. I'm going to generalize this and say a fluid is anything that flows, which would consist of liquids and gases. In fact, some side tidbit, you don't need to know this for the class, but there are some solids that actually flow too, such as glass. Did you know that glass actually does flow? It's not perfectly 100% solid. It does flow a little bit. That's another story for another day. You can look at that if you want. My point is, a fluid is anything that flows. Generally, these are liquids and gases. So here in this course, we're going to look at fluids like water and air. All right, so what's convection? Convection is the transfer of energy by the mass movement of a fluid in general. So for example, this can be as simple as you have a pitcher of hot water and you dump it into a pot. You have the energy is in the hot water. Then as you pour it, the energy just flows with the fluid into the pot. So the energy just flows with the material that has that energy. On a meteorological sense, an example of this would be you have a warm air mass that moves from the western United States into the eastern United States. Or a cold front. You have convection, cold air moving from point A to point B. Perhaps more common use of convection in our atmosphere is in something we call a thermal. Now, in this picture, I show you the sun shining. It heats up the surface of the ground, and that's going to heat up the air immediately above it. That air is then going to become more buoyant. It's because it's less dense. It heats up, so that means it expands. It's less dense. It's more buoyant, and so it's going to start to rise. That's what we call a thermal. You end up with this bubble of hot air moving upwards. Now, as that air moves up, well, it kind of leaves a space where it used to be. What fills that in? Well, you're going to have air come in from the sides and replace it, and you end up with something that's called a convection cycle. So you have a hot surface. The thermals are going to rise, so air is going to rise up that way, and then they're going to spread outwards, and then air is going to be pulled back in beneath at the origin of that thermal. So you end up with this convection cycle. In the next video I'm going to show you here, I'm going to actually show you a convection cycle. We'll go to the physics lab and I will show you a convection cycle actually happening. In the meantime, though, we have a specific form of convection. Notice in the convection cycle figure on the right that you have a couple of smokestacks and it shows the smoke being blown along the ground. Well, that part of the convection cycle is what we call advection. You have energy that's moving along the surface of along the Earth's surface. All right? So you have the convection cycle, you have the air moving in general, and the energy's moving with it, and advection is just that part that's along the surface of the Earth. All right, now another aspect of convection that we need to look at, this is huge because we're going to see this all over the place. When air rises, well, two things happen. First of all, as that thermal rises, it's now under less pressure, right? Because higher up in altitude, you have less pressure. So this thermal rises, And since it's under less pressure, that that pocket of air, expands. So rising air is going to expand. But as it expands, it's actually going to cool down as well. So rising air, again, this is a form of convection, rising air is going to expand and cool. Now, in some cases, you can actually reverse this process, such as if you go up a mountain, it'll expand and cool. Then as you go down the other side, it's going to reverse that process. Sinking air will then compress and warm up. And we're going to see some really cool examples of this when we start talking about wind in chapter 8. But that's the idea of convection. You have energy in a certain parcel of air, and that parcel of air is going to move, taking the energy with it.